Jam-packed today. We're going to start with non-fungible tokens. If you don't know what those are, this is a very big deal because so many people are investing in them right now. Are they really investments? I've got a bit of a blowback here. Most people think that Bitcoin is anonymous. We're going to talk about how it absolutely is not. We're going to talk about anonymous, in fact, hacking the Russians, Microsoft, what they're doing against the Russians, and this little comedic thing about cars. Hi, everybody. Of course, Craig Peterson here, your Chief Information Security Officer, and you're listening to News Radio, WGAN AM 560 and FM 98.5. I'd like to invite you to join me on the Morning Drive Wednesday mornings at 7:34. We'll keep you up to date with all of the news. NFTs are a very big deal. I'm going to pull up here on my screen right now. This is a picture of Mr. Jack Dorsey. We'll go full screen. An article from a website called CoinDesk. CoinDesk is one of these sites that really tries to track what's happening out there in the Bitcoin community. Of course, nowadays it's much more than Bitcoin, isn't it? We're talking about all kinds of different currencies that have a blockchain backend. They're called cryptocurrencies, basically. But the big one was, of course, Bitcoin. And there is a whole concept now when we're talking about things like cryptocurrencies and these non-fungible tokens. People have been investing in them like crazy. People are making millions of dollars every week. Now, remember, I am not an investment advisor, and particularly I'm not your investment advisor, right? So take all of this to your investment advisor. I'm not telling you to buy them. I am telling you to be cautious here, though, because these non-fungible tokens are designed to give you the ability to be able to just, own something in the digital world. Well, what might you own in the digital world? We've had a lot of different stuff. We've seen some just crazy monkey things. Have you seen those? These little pictures of monkeys. They're graphic designed and it's all animated, if you will. It's kind of like cartoons, and people pay money for them. Well, one of the things that people paid money for was the rights to the first tweet ever on Twitter. So that's what you're getting when we're talking about an NFT, a non-fungible transaction. It is now yours. So this particular NFT we're talking about was of our friend here, Jack Dorsey. We'll pull it up again, this article. And he had a tweet that was sold last year for $48 million. That is a lot of money. So people look at this as an investment, but it's not the same as hanging art on the wall. You've got a Picasso, that has some intrinsic value. It's a painting. It has oil paints on it, right? It was designed by and painted by a crazy man years ago. And you can take that Picasso and you can turn it around and sell it. It has some real value. Well, if you own the rights to something, let's say it's one of these monkey pictures, it kind of reminds me of a postage stamp, and you paid real money for it. Some of these things are going, as I said, for over $1 million. And this Jack Dorsey first tweet went for $48 million. So let's say that that's what you did, right? You bought this thing for $48 million. What do you have? Really, what do you have? Because anybody can go online and look at that tweet. Anybody can print it up and stick it on a wall. Anybody can go out and get that picture of the monkeys, right? The guy drew. And you can look at it. In fact, I can pull it up right now if you wanted to see it. But people paid real money for that. So they've got what, really? What do they have? You can't take it off the wall like your Picasso and sell it, right? Or Banksy if you're into the more modern art. It's just not doable. So what is doable? How do you make this work? Well, owning the NFT only gives you bragging rights. In reality, that's what it does. You have bragging rights. Because you could take that digital picture and make 100 quadrillion copies of it. Yeah, you'd still own the NFT. You would still have in the blockchain for whatever NFT company you're using the rights to it. It would say that you owned it. So let's talk about the blockchain behind it. There are a lot of companies that are trying to give you that blockchain. Okay, all right, I get it. Yeah, I get to own it, right? But who's running the blockchain behind it? Who's validating that you own it? With Bitcoin and many of these other blockchain currencies that are out there, there are various companies and individuals who are registered, who have all of the paperwork, if you will, saying who owns how much of what and who paid who and everything. And that, by the way, is why it takes so long for some of these Bitcoin and other transactions to occur. But how about the NFT? There are tons of companies out there that say they will certify the NFT. So it gets to be a real problem. And when we get into this Jack Dorsey tweet and this article about it, which let me pull it up again here for you guys. This guy, Sina Estavi, bought the very first tweet ever from Twitter founder Jack Dorsey for $2.9 million last year. And he decided that he wanted to sell it. So he listed it for sale, again at $48 million last week. Real money. Well, he put it up for open bid, and this article on CoinDesk is talking about that, and you can see that if you're watching me on Rumble or YouTube. I'm showing you my screen here right now. But this Iranian-born crypto entrepreneur named again, Sina Estavi purchased it for $2.9 million in March 2021. Last Thursday, he announced on Twitter, where else, right, that he wanted to sell this NFT. And he said, hey, listen, I'm going to put 50% of the proceeds to charity. Well, the auction closed. This was an open auction. People could go and bid on it. And that auction closed with an offer of basically $277 at current prices when this article was written. $277. And the lowest bid was $6. And as I recall, this is not in this article, but there were only a handful of bids. Like, when I say a handful, I mean like a half a dozen bids. It's crazy. Well, this is a real problem because the deadline is over. He paid how much for it, right? How much did he pay? Pull that up again. $2.9 million last year. And his highest bid was in the neighborhood of $280. Isn't that crazy? So did he get money on this? Did he win money on this? I don't know. I'm looking at this saying, well, is it worth it to buy something like that? You might think, oh, well, the very first Apple computer, an Apple One. Well, that's going to be worth some serious money. Well, yeah, it is. It's something, you can grab onto. You can hold on to it, right? It's something. And you can sell it. You can trade it. You can take a picture of it. You can't make digital copies of it. It's a physical thing that's worth something. Same thing with that Picasso on the wall. It's really worth something. It has some basic intrinsic value. Jack's tweet, the very first tweet, how much is that thing worth, right? It basically nothing. So the tweet is showing here, I'll pull it up on the screen again, that he's selling at Jack 2006-03-21 at 8:50:14 p.m. Just setting up my Twitter. So there you go. There's Jack, his very first tweet. And it's absolutely amazing, right? Is it worth it? Well, let me pull up some other stuff here for you guys. I'm going to pull this up. Here is Coinbase launching an NFT marketplace in hopes of appealing to crypto and mainstream users. So here's some examples from NFTs. I'm going to zoom in on this for those of you guys watching on Rumble or on Twitter. Actually, you can see it on Twitter too, but YouTube. Here you go. Here's some NFTs. It's artwork and it's a creature. So you can buy creature number 7806 right now for 6 ETH. So let me see. Value of 6 Ethereum is what? Ethereum to US dollars. So for $3,084 as of right now, you can get a crappy picture that even I could have drawn, okay, of this guy. And look at all of the work this artist has put in. There's how many of these up here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 of them. And it's the same head each time. Looks like it's almost the same eyes. He changes colors, and he's got different backgrounds. It's absolutely nuts. So that's what they're trying to do right now, trying to sell these NFTs. So who's going to buy that? Who's going to pay $3,000 for artwork that, Hunter Biden could have done with a straw blowing ink around? Here's another one. This is from Ledger Insights. NBA's launching dynamic NFTs for fans. Baseball cards for the NBA that are basically just worthless. They're NFTs, non-fungible tokens. It has taken the crypto world by storm, and people are losing millions as you look. But it really is changing the e-commerce world. Stick around, we'll be right back. Bitcoin, blockchain, all of the rage. A lot of people are talking about it, but I gotta say, most people who are talking about it don't know much about it. And when it comes to anonymity, Bitcoin is probably the worst thing you could possibly do. It's amazing. Hi, everybody. I'm Craig Peterson, your Chief Information Security Officer, and you're listening to News Radio, WGAN, AM 560 and FM 98.5. I'd like to invite you to join me on the Morning Drive Wednesday mornings at 7:34. We'll keep you up to date right here. There are a lot of misconceptions out there when it comes to technology, almost any kind of technology. And blockchain and Bitcoin are examples of a very misunderstood technology. Now, I'm not talking about, how does it work? How are these ledgers maintained? How does this whole mining thing work? Why has China banned it? Why are a lot of countries going away from it? One country now, the dictator said, we're going to use Bitcoin as our official currency in addition to the US dollar. What's going on? Well, it is complicated behind the scenes. It's complicated to use, although there are some entrepreneurs that have made some great strides there. I saw a documentary on what has been happening in that one country I mentioned, where they are able to pay in US dollars using Bitcoin. So they'll go up to a vendor on the street, quite literally. They'll have their smartphone with them. The vendor has their smartphone. They type in 15 cents for the taco and hit send. It goes to the other person, and they have 15 cents worth of Bitcoin. By the way, these types of microtransactions, with the way Bitcoin is structured behind the scenes, make things even less manageable in the Bitcoin world than they have been in the past. And that's why, in case you didn't know, Bitcoin is making some major changes here fairly soon. They've got to change the way all of this ledger stuff works, because it takes too long to record and authorize transactions. And these ledgers just get way too long when it comes to all of these kind of microtransactions. So there's stuff going on. Bitcoin, there are many of these types of currencies out there. Ethereum's one. You've heard about Dogecoin because, of course, that's Elon Musk has been talking about, many others. And they're all different somewhat, but the main concepts are the same. Well, one of the big concepts, I'm going to pull an article up here on the screen for those watching on YouTube or also on Rumble. But this is an article from our friends at Wired Magazine. And I have subscribed to Wired for many years. This particular one is about what Wired is calling the crypto trap. Now, that's a very big deal. It is a trap, and it's a trap in a lot of different ways. And that's what we're going to talk about right now. Crypto is not what its name implies. A lot of people look at it and say, oh, crypto, that's cryptography. That's like the German Enigma machine in World War II and all of this new great crypto that we have nowadays. And there are some pretty amazing new cryptographic technologies that we've been using. But no, that's not what's really going on. You see, the basic premise behind all of these technologies is the concept of having a wallet. And this wallet has a unique identifier. It has a number assigned to it. So if I'm sending money to you, I'm going to have your wallet ID, your wallet number, and I'm going to now send you some amount, a fraction, most likely, of a cryptocurrency. Well, certainly if it's Bitcoin, it's almost certainly a fraction. And so I'm going to send you $100 worth of, let's say, Bitcoin. What ends up happening now is these ledgers, which are public, are all going to record that Craig sent you $100 worth of Bitcoin. Of course, it's going to be in a fraction of a Bitcoin, so sometimes there's rounding errors. It's not going to be really exactly $100. Plus, there's the amazing amount of volatility in the cyber currencies. So even though I meant to send $100, it might end up being 110 if it goes up. It might be 90 if it goes down, right? You get that. You understand how that works. So the problem now is I have sent you $100 and public ledgers that anyone can gain access to. Now say wallet number 1234 sent $100 to wallet number 5678. Obviously the wallet number is a lot longer than that. So that's fine, right? And there's a degree of anonymity there. It's really called pseudo-anonymity. Because in reality, it's not completely anonymous because people know the transaction occurred and they know the wallet numbers, correct? It's like a bank account, right? If I put money into your bank account, that bank account number knows that the money came from a check that I wrote. Can you imagine that? Someone writing a check? And that check, I had a number on it, a bank account number, right? So it can all be tracked. Well, much the same thing is true when it comes to cryptocurrencies. These cryptocurrencies are in public ledgers, and those public ledgers can be used with a little bit of work to figure out who you are. So this article here from our friends at Wired gets really kind of hairy. And it might be of interest to you to read, but this is talking about a takedown that happened, and this is kind of a massive takedown. This takedown was of a whole group of people who were involved in some really, really nasty stuff. In this particular case, what it was kiddie porn. Just a terrible, terrible thing, and the abuse surrounding it. So this article goes into not a lot of detail. I'm not going to read it because here on the air, because I don't want to upset too many people, because it's some of the details of this, even to think about them, are incredible. But the police broke into this middle-class suburb home in the outskirts of Atlanta, and there was Homeland Security, it was a guy from the IRS, and they came in, they took all of their electronic devices, they separated the family, putting the father, who is an assistant principal at the local high school, assistant principal. And he was the target of this investigation. So they had him in one room, they had his wife in another room, and they put the two kids into a third room. And they started questioning him. Now, this is part of a takedown of as I said, a whole ring of these people, including this assistant principal at a school. Can you believe that? So this IRS guy had flown in from Washington, D.C. to have a look over what was going on. But this agent from the IRS and his partner, whose name is, his name was Janaskowski. I probably got that wrong, and Tigran Gambarian, I guess. And they had a small group of investigators, and they were at a whole bunch of different federal agencies, not just the IRS. But what once seemed to be untraceable was no longer untraceable. Now, I've talked on the show before about a lecture I went to by the Secret Service about how they had tracked down and shut down the world's largest website that was being used to sell illegal materials online. And it's fascinating what they did. But frankly, they're calling this particular bust a proof of concept, and that's why the IRS was in on this as well. But it was huge. So here's a quote from the IRS agent in this Wired magazine article. He's saying he remembers how the gravity of this whole thing. Let me pull this up on the screen too so you can kind of read along here. But this was a high school administrator, a husband and a father of two. Whether he was guilty or innocent, the accusations this team of law enforcement agents were leveling against him, their mere presence in the home would almost certainly ruin his life. And he, as well as these other people, were counting on anonymity from Bitcoin. Now, obviously, I'm glad they got taken down. But listen, folks, if you think that it's safe, that it's anonymous, it ain't. Bitcoin just ain't there. CraigPeterson.com. Stick around. I've been blamed for really complaining about people not updating their software, right? And that includes things like firewalls. Well, the FBI has stepped in, and they are going ahead and doing updates for you. Hi, I'm Craig Peterson, your Chief Information Security Officer, and you're listening to News Radio WGAN, AM 560 and FM 98.5. You can, of course, join me every Wednesday morning at 7:34. All right, I've got too many things going on here in front of me right now. So let's get into this, because this is, I think, something that should concern all of us. What should we be doing as a country? People are not updating their software. They're not updating their hardware, and particularly their hardware. Take a look at what's been happening with the firewalls and the firewall concerns. Everybody has some sort of firewall. Well, almost everybody, right? But enough people that we can say everybody has a firewall. You get your internet from you name it. And because of the fact they're using something called NAT, Network Address Translation, they've got some sort of firewall in front of you. So, for instance, you've got your phone, right? You're using your phone, and it's got internet on it. You're going through whoever your carrier is, and that carrier is giving you internet access, right? They don't have enough IP addresses, particularly IPv4, in order for you to get your very own unique little address out on the internet. Well, they do when it comes to V6. Things are a little bit different. But your device is not completely exposed on the internet. Windows comes with a firewall. And by default, the Windows firewall is turned on. Now, this gets more than a little concerning, because that firewall that's turned on isn't really doing anything because they've got a firewall turned on, and yet every service is accessible from outside, which is defeating the purpose of the firewall. Again, it's a complaint I've had about Microsoft now for decades, which is they have features that are just check boxes. Yes, it's got a firewall. Yeah, it's turned on. But the features don't work, right? So having a firewall and having everything open defeats the purpose of a firewall. Macs do not have a firewall turned on by default, but they do have their services disabled, which is just as effective, if not more effective. So one of the things we advise people to do is go into your Windows system, into the firewalls and your security settings, and turn off any services that you're not using. If you're not sharing file systems, then turn that off. In other words, like you're mounting the G drive or whatever you might call it from another computer, then you don't need it. If you're not a server for what's called SMB, then you don't need to share it, right? So turn off everything that you don't need. The worst that's going to happen is one of your programs isn't going to work right, and you know what you did last, so you're going to turn it back on. And you can do a lot of research online to find out what they are. We have over 200 settings that we change in Windows when we get a customer. Now, on the Mac side, you can turn it on. I like turning it on. I like turning off the ability to see my machine. So, in other words, the ability to be able to ping it. So I turn it on and I enable specific services. And again, you can do some research on that. I've got an Improving Windows Security course that people have taken, and we should probably do that again, if not just have some free webinars on how to do this so you guys can learn how to do it. But not that hard to do. Anyhow, bottom line is people aren't updating their computers, even the Macs and Windows. We have a client that we just started, a new client, and we're tightening things up. And we've been finding Mac computers that are multiple major revisions behind. And that to me is shocking because Apple Macs are just so easy to update. It is extremely rare that an Apple update will make your computer break, unlike in the Windows world where it's pretty common. So Windows guys, I can't understand, but you're even more exposed. You're a bigger target. You need to keep up to date. So how about all of the other equipment that we have? I've had warnings again and again with you guys about what's happening with our smart devices that are out there, right? Our security cameras we have up in the corner, right? We have these smart thermostats people are using. The list goes on and on of all of this equipment that we're using that is exposing us because when was the last time you updated it? How about the firmware in your router or your Wi-Fi, right? You know some of the devices that I recommend to people, and if you have any questions, just email me, me@craigpeterson.com. I can give you recommendations, even if you're a home user, although my business obviously is working with businesses, on what kind of Wi-Fi to buy, what you should get, what you should do. I don't charge for any of that stuff, okay? You get it. But you have to ask me for it. Me at craigpeterson.com. So you get this information and you go ahead and you buy whatever it is, but you don't keep it up to date, which is why I tend to only recommend stuff that automatically updates, right? But that also means every few years you're going to have to replace it, because unless you're using the good Cisco equipment where you can get a 7-year life out of it, you're not going to find that in consumer grade equipment. So what's happened here, I'm going to pull this up on my screen for people watching this on YouTube or on Rumble, but here is a thing that came straight out of our friends here from the FBI. This is from CISO. This is a magazine that I do follow, right? But they're talking about what they call Cyclops Blink. So the article says, for the second time in a year, the FBI has used search and seizure warrants to clean malware from devices owned by private businesses and users without their explicit approval. The FBI used this approach to disrupt a botnet believed to be the creation of Russian government hackers. So they're calling this Cyclops Blink malware, discovered earlier this year. So here's the problem. What do you do? If you're the federal government, how do you try and keep your country safe? Now, we know we've got these military contractors. They make missiles that take out missiles, right? That provide defensive systems. You've heard of Iron Dome from years ago, all the way through all of the current stuff. That's what they do. But what do they do? What can they do when there's a botnet? A botnet is where there are multiple computers, in this case probably tens of thousands of computers located in the United States, that are acting kind of like sleeper cells. They sit there and they wait for commands as to what they should do. Should they try and attack a machine? Should they try and spread more malware? What should they be doing? And these things are vicious. They are absolutely nasty. And in this case, we're looking at Russian malware. So Russia effectively, kind of like the Americans, you might remember that TV show, it was a great show, but has computers that are owned by you and me and our businesses and government agencies that are under the control of the Russians. Now, you don't even know it. You're using your computer, you're playing games, you're going to Facebook, whatever it is you do on your computer, yet your computer is under command and control of the Russians. So the FBI goes to a court and says, hey, we've got to go ahead and shut this down. We need a warrant. They get the warrant, and this search and seizure warrant lets them now get onto these machines that are part of the botnet or the controlling machines for the botnet and either remove the malware or go ahead and take control of the botnet themselves so it can't be used. And by the way, our friends at Microsoft, they've gotten involved in this too, which is really, frankly, kind of cool in shutting down some of these botnets. Hey, I want to encourage everybody, take a couple of minutes, go to craigpeterson.com/subscribe. That's Craig Peterson, CraigPeterson, and subscribe, and I'll be sending you a special report on passwords plus 2 more. I send out the most popular special reports that anybody has ever asked for. Hey, I've got a little bit more to discuss on what's happening with Russia and Microsoft and more. But I'm also going to talk about QR codes. There is a great explanation that's in your newsletter from Monday about why you shouldn't trust them. Hi, I'm Craig Peterson, your Chief Information Security Officer, and you're listening to News Radio WGAN, AM 560 and FM 98.5. I'd like to invite you to join me on the Morning Drive Wednesday mornings at 7:34. Well, let's finish up this Russian thing, and then we're going to get into why you cannot trust QR codes and a brand new way the bad guys are using QR codes to really, really mess with us. Now, if you're watching over on either YouTube or on Rumble, you'll see this. Let me pull up my screen for you. But here we go. So this is very interesting. In the last segment, we talked a little bit about what our friends over at the FBI have been doing, which is they have been removing malware from people's computers because people haven't been keeping their computers up to date, right? Part of the botnets that we explained. Well, the FBI isn't the only one out there trying to stop these Russians and the hackers. Anonymous has been very big at it. In fact, let me pull up this other article. This is from Security Affairs, and here we go. And it's talking about this whole army of these anonymous hackers. Now, anonymous have been a nightmare for many businesses that they didn't like. Right, Anonymous will go ahead and they'll do usually pretty basic stuff. They'll do denial of service attacks, some other things, right? So they don't like you because they don't like the "Don't Say Gay" bill in Florida. And, without bothering to do any research, they'll just start attacking organizations that support it, right? Or organizations that don't support it, depending on how they want to do it. So this is kind of an interesting article here because it's talking about these various websites that they've hacked. Now, some of them are government sites and some of them are private industries. Now, one of the cool things, bad things about hacking private industry and releasing the emails is now the competitors to these businesses know what they're doing. And in some cases, there's proprietary technology that's being released. Now, when it comes to Russian proprietary technology, the Western world doesn't care a whole lot about some of it. But here's some examples of what these hacktivists have got at. This is a company called Forest. 37,000 emails stolen from the company, Russian logging and wood manufacturing firm. Again, it would give you a little bit of an idea into the whole Russian, what are they doing in the forest industry. This one, I think, is a little more concerning for the Russians. Aerogas. This is an engineering company that focuses in the oil and gas industry. Their clients include a whole bunch of Russian companies. They've leaked approximately 100,000 emails from Aerogas. That is a huge deal because so much of the country's revenue, the number one industry in Russia, is oil and gas. Petrofort, one of the largest office space and business centers in St. Petersburg, the hackers have leaked approximately 300,000 emails from Petrofort. Again, you can use that to find out what's happening in their economy. What are they doing? How are businesses doing? Are they going to go under? So you can see some tweets here. I've got them up on my screen on YouTube and Rumble. Anonymous, what they're saying that they've done. And you can follow Anonymous directly on Twitter. I'm not particularly fond of them. They've done a lot of things that I disagree with. But this is really telling us about a whole new approach to warfare. Right back in the day, you and I couldn't get involved. We could potentially take up arms and go and fight, right? Think about the Spanish-American War. Think about what's happening now in Ukraine, where Americans have just gone over there and taken up firearms in order to help to defend Ukraine. People who are maybe of Ukrainian descent, maybe not, right? But we have never seen this type of involvement by average citizens because Anonymous is not like some big fancy company or government agency. Anonymous is a bunch of people who are trying to be anonymous and do something. So they stole 145 gigabytes. Look at this. It's just crazy. So here's the anonymous Twitter thread itself, right? Talking about what they've done. It's absolutely incredible. So that's what Anonymous is up to. They are hacking Russia, and they're hacking Russia in a big way. Now, next up, we have our friends at Microsoft. Microsoft has been seizing Russian domains that they are accusing of having been linked to these Russian hackers that have been going after think tanks and government agencies in the U.S. and the EU, I should say, which I'm sure includes the UK, because the UK's gotten involved. So this article from The Verge is talking about how Microsoft has seized 7 domains belonging to Fancy Bear, APT28, which is, we've seen them active in a number of companies here, right in the Northeast, United States. These companies who are trying to provide materials, software, hardware for government contracts, right? So they're not even direct government contractors for the feds. They are just subcontractors, and we've seen Fancy Bear in there. We've seen the Chinese in these companies. It's incredible. They have no idea that all of their intellectual property is being stolen, which is why the federal government has started cracking down on contractors and subcontractors. And this whole paragraph 7012 thing, we're getting kind of geeky here, but companies that have to protect even unclassified information, confidential unclassified, and they haven't been. So Microsoft obtained a court order. You can see this on my screen over at YouTube and at Rumble, to take control of each domain on April 6th, that then started redirecting them to a sinkhole. So what they do is they take control of the DNS for the domain. So the root name servers now point to a Microsoft name server and then send them to a sinkhole. A sinkhole is basically nowhere. You go there, there's nothing on the site, right? Or in this case, also servers used by cybersecurity experts to capture and analyze malicious connections. And they'll do that oftentimes when we're talking about these botnets, like we talked about a little earlier today. So apparently they're trying to establish long-term access to the systems of the targets. What did we just talk about? Long-term access? Botnets, right? That's what botnets are. So Microsoft has gotten involved. They've been doing this now for a little while. It's obviously not their normal business model, but it is something that they've been doing. They were also, by the way, the Fancy Bear linked to the cyber attacks on the DNC in 2016, and they also targeted the US election in 2020, which is why, part of the reason why, anyways, I keep saying, don't use electronic equipment for our elections. Have paper ballots, have people count those ballots. Yeah, it takes longer. You can't have the instant thing on TV, which is why all of these news services say, oh, don't do that, that's ridiculous. But it's the only thing we can guarantee that these guys, like I got it up on the screen again, Fancy Bear, the Chinese, etc., it's the only way they can't get in. And if we were doing paper ballots and we had bipartisan people counting the ballots and independents counting the ballots, observing this, we wouldn't have all of these problems that we had with the last election, where people were saying, well, it was stolen, it was hacked. How do we know it was stolen? How do we know it wasn't stolen? How, again, go back to paper ballots, get rid of the scanning machines, and particularly get rid of these electronic voting machines where you touch the screen to cast your vote. Those things are ridiculous. What if there's a software bug in it, right? How can you go back and change the vote? People have complained about it again and again. Wait a minute, I voted for this guy, and yet it recorded my vote for the other guy. It's ridiculous. Anyways, back to QR codes, okay? I'm going to pull this up on the screen because I think this is kind of a cool article here. This is from actually a site over in India. It's called scroll.in. And they're talking in here about how hazardous it can be to use QR codes. Now, they're not saying don't use QR codes, right? We've all had to use them, right? I've got up on my screen this picture of being at a table, right? And you scan the QR code in order to get the menu, in order to order. I did that. I was in Vermont, and we were riding motorcycles, a buddy and I, going to the little tiny restaurant, small restaurant, and it had like a half a dozen tables, and they didn't have menus. You scanned it, the QR code that was there on the table, and you placed your order, and off it goes. A lot of places, they've been doing that with menus. You've seen that more and more. Saves them money as well, and lets them change their prices more frequently. Yeah, thanks for that, inflation, guys. But why shouldn't you use these QR codes? Why should you be extra careful? Well, here's the answer. QR codes are the URL of a web page. That's the bottom line. Would you click a random URL that came in an email? Would you click on a random URL in an ad or on a web page, right? We certainly know better than to click URLs in our emails. But that's exactly what the QR code is. And on top of it, The URL in a QR code tends to be what we call a shortened URL. So it might be bit.ly, so it might be bit.ly/ and then some random characters. How do you know where it's going to take you? You don't. All you know is it's going to take you to bit.ly, but that bit.ly URL could be sending you to a malicious site, and now your phone could be hacked. It could be using your phone for Bitcoin mining, for who knows what. So be very, very careful. And the bad guys are using these in a different way that you might not have seen before, which is they are embedding QR code graphics into emails. And they're thinking that people are going to hold up their phone to the email, and what are they going to do? They're going to scan the QR code that was in their email, and now they're in trouble. Yeah, that simple. Hey, visit me online, craigpeterson.com. Make sure you sign up for my newsletter, craigpeterson.com/subscribe. Of course, Craig Peterson, SON.com. And I'm going to send you my top 3 special reports, absolutely free. We got to take care of these bad guys. All right, guys.